Welcome to the channel. Today, if you notice, there's a steering wheel in here, and a steering column, and a gauge cluster, and seats. That's big news. So that means it's going to fire up soon.
We're at the movies, huh?
Yep, we're at the movies.
So I'm super excited. My gauges finally came, and I sent them to two different vendors, and I had really good luck with the second vendor. I sent them to Corvette Specialties of Maryland West MD, something. Corvette Specialties of West MD, that's what it is. And they did a great job. I just wanted to initially just have them refaced, particularly this one, because of the faded tack red line. And he recommended sending both units complete so he can check through them and calibrate them. And it was just a good thing he did, because there was quite a bit that needed to be fixed in these. So these are both completely gone through the tack and speedo. And the needles I had on them before, they weren't weighted properly. So whenever you'd be going up in speed between here on the down-low range, it read low. Once you got over a certain point, it read okay, then it read high going down the other way. So particularly for the tack, that probably makes a big difference in balancing, because these are mechanical gauges. So he replaced them with properly weighted needles and just went through the rest of them. So now I can finally finish this cluster, and this indicator lens is pretty well shot, and so are the turn signal ones. So I got shiny new ones. So I'm going to take this apart, clean everything, make sure it's good to go, put this bad boy together for the last time, and get this thing ready to go in the car. So this thing's ready to run. So I put the cluster together, just had to put the gauges in. I took them out a couple times just because the lenses were a little dirty underneath, but you can see in here, lights, brake, parking brake, and turn signals. Oh, there's a little speck there. I'll have to clean that out. But everything looks good. So now I'm going to move on to putting in just a couple switches and stuff that goes on the outside, and I rebuilt the headlight switch from a couple that I had laying around. So now I'll put all this stuff on and the odometer cable. Then it's time to put the oil pressure line in the car and start to put this guy in. So let's get to work. So now the cluster is assembled. I have all the switches on it. The only thing I need to do is put on the trip odometer cable, and then put all the bulbs from the main harness, hook the harness up to the cluster. But I'm really happy with the way everything turned out. And everything should work. Everything should work. Everything's brand new, except these. All these guys are original reconditioned. This is an original ignition switch with a new lock. I bought a whole new lock kit for the whole car. New oil pressure gauge. These gauges have been rebuilt, but everything else is original. So let's put the wiring in and get this puppy in the car. So the gauge cluster is now all buttoned up. I have on the trip odometer, knob and cable. The ground for the cluster goes over here, the radio capacitor goes over here, and then everything else kind of lays out. I just laid the harness over, plugged it into these holes, and then just went off of the wiring diagram and just started hooking stuff up. So now it's time to put this bad boy in the car. And my dad put in the oil pressure line, which should be feeding into here somewheres back there. So I made these studs just from 1/4 inch all thread. I'll probably wind them out, or a couple of them, and then I will put the cluster in, pull it back a little bit, that way there's room to work back here. I'll cut these zip ties for these fresh air vents, let those hang down, and then just start hooking everything up. Get the harness over there, hook up the radio, just start plugging everything in. This is, I'm not going to say the easy part because I don't want to jinx myself, but this is the fun part. Putting the cluster in, then after that call them and right turn that key. So the cluster is just slid in place and all the wires are drooped through behind the Z-bar. The hardest part was to get the fuse block to squeeze between the Z-bar, the windshield wiper transmission, the pedal assembly, and a couple other brackets. But I snaked it through kind of this way and just fed it through, and then there's a hole just big enough for it to fall through. So I did that, dropped my fresh air controls down, slid everything in, and then I fished the wires out through the top. So I just have to take inventory to make sure everything's here, and then I have to figure out what path it takes across the Z-bar and start hooking up like the clock wiring, figure out what wiring goes, like all this will go over to the passenger side. These guys all go, because this is heater, glove box, dome light switch, so all that goes over across. That goes in the middle. One of these, I think this one's for the radio, wiper motor, maybe this, you know, I'll figure them out here. There's a few wires, not a whole lot, and the same thing over here. Just figure them out one at a time.
So what we're doing here today is feeding these wires through this grommet here for the Firewall, and harnesses come with these connectors already attached, and they don't go through the hole in the grommet very well. So instead of cutting the grommet, made a little tool here so we can just pull these contacts out. We marked them here as brown and white so we get them back in the same spot. And here's a handy dandy tool, just a pair of thin gauge steel with vice grips so we can go in through here. There's a little tab inside here that holds these contacts in place. We can just kind of, what I want to do is just hold the wire and push the contact toward myself here, and then we put this metal in here and it should release, and the connector will come out from the contact. Again, we're going to hold the wire in like this. We're mostly holding the wire in, not the connector shell. Push in, and that'll release right out like that. And once that's done, we can feed our rest of these wires through the grommet. And once we pull those through, we're going to go back and just reinsert the contacts here. So, brown one. Here's this little tab that we're releasing, actually, with that tool. It bites in on a ledge inside the connector shell. Just slide this in from the back. Should hear a little click, and it's secure. And then doing the same one with the other one, the white one here. Here's your little retainer. I'm just going to slide slide in. So that retainer goes on the same side as this little recess right here for the tool. Just going to slide that in until it clicks and it's secure, and that's how we do that.
So the clusters in the car just remove the studs that I used for adjustment because I'm going to hook up the oil pressure line, and I wanted to make sure this fit nice and tight. That way I could make sure the oil pressure line's fully seated. But other than that, everything's hooked up except a couple wires down here for the dimmer switch. I need to put the fuse block on the firewall, hook up the wire for the column, hook up this fresh air vent cable. I got the passenger seat in. The wires ran through the door to both power window motors, and then I need to hook up this wire for the power windows once the fuse block is on the firewall. And then the column's ready to go in, and wheel. So we're getting there. See the one I'm talking about? We have, as you can see, the steering wheel is in with all the column features. The gauge cluster is in. Everything is wired up. Like I said before, the doors are wired up. Both seats are in, kind of. Just need some more finessing and stuff there, but those are all ready to go. See the steering linkage, steering column's in, all the wires are tucked into the next harness. The only thing that's not done is the windows aren't attached to the regulators because the regulators are at the bottom, so when we get the car live we can roll the regulators up to the glass. But now it's just time to hook the battery up and bump the key. So that's exciting. Do you really think we're gonna start the car up in the video whenever I put the cluster in? Absolutely not. That's a totally different video. I have to pull that. It's like an American Idol thing. They pull a commercial break right before they announce the finale winner. We're not going to start the car up in this video. I'm going to make you wait at least another week, even though the car already started, but I'm not going to show you that. I'll show you that in another video because that's too much excitement. That's a whole separate video. This one was just showing how to get the wiring in the car, set it up, because don't worry, there's a whole lot of other challenges that we found along the way. Stuff that may or may not have leaked or may not have worked the first time. There's a couple little bugs, but we'll get to that next week. If you enjoyed the video, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe, especially to see the car run and drive. But I still got a lot of work to do, so I'll catch you guys later.